Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming outside me today. Today, we are going all the way out to the West Coast, to the great state of California. We're talking with Kyle Reynolds, who is out there doing some amazing archery and bow hunting work, still getting new into the sport, which is fantastic to hear, fantastic to see. And if you, as always, want to be just like Kyle, jump it on to the podcast, whether you're a veteran, whether you're a rookie, please send me an email at averagejackarchery@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Average Jack Archery. And of course, you can always leave a comment on YouTube. But Kyle, welcome from the great state of California. Thank you for being on the podcast, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's truly a pleasure. It's truly an honor to meet other normal dudes from across the country, different time zones, different species, and I really appreciate you representing the state of California. I have to ask, we'll have to start off the podcast. What is your current bow setup so all the average Joes in the world could know? You know, your poundage, your draw length, that sort of stuff. You want to dive into your arrow build, you're welcome to, just so we all kind of have a basis of where you're starting. And also, since a lot of my listeners are not from the West Coast, what is your main species that you're chasing out there in California?
Well, right now, I'm still working on my first bow. It's a Diamond Infinite Edge. My draw length, I think, is about 29 and a half, 30 inches, somewhere in that neighborhood. I can't remember for sure. Pulling about 55, 60 pounds. My sight is a True Glow 5-pin, nothing special. My arrow setups are the Easton Axis 340s, the 5mm, with the Trophy Taker shrink wrap fletchings with the blazer vanes on them. Kind of depending on what I'm going for, I'm shooting either the NAP kill zones with the cut-on contact tips or the G5 strikers.
Oh, that they are probably one of the best replaceable blade 3-blade broadheads that are made out there. Well, first of all, G5 makes prime bows and quest bow. I mean, they just make really high machine stuff, and those strikers are laser sharp out of the package. Those are a really good 3-blade, and they have that nice cut on contact tip to them too, just like their bigger brother, which is the Montec. No, that's a really good setup. And I'm glad that you go over your setup and people are willing to do that, because what you have is not a flagship $1,000 bow and all these hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of accessories. But do you go out in your backyard and still hit your target just fine? Yeah, of course you do, because you're a grown-up and you can shoot a bow. Like, this is what I keep trying to tell people, because people watch videos and they watch me and they see me shooting, $1,000 bow, or my target bow is, it's like a $1,200, $1,300 bow. And they're like, do I need that? Do I need to save up money to shoot like that? I'm like, no, you don't. You can go out and get a Diamond. You can go out and get a Bear or PSC and shoot that. And still, I mean, you're enjoying the sport. If you weren't enjoying the sport, you wouldn't be on the podcast. Right. So, and I have to ask about those Easton Axis. Those things have to hit like freight trains.
They seem to, I did end up shooting a squirrel with one, and the thud was amazing.
Just wait till you smack a big game animal. And speaking of which, you told me before the podcast, but there in your part of California, what is the big game species that you're predominantly after? Although you did say there's two you can chase.
Typically, your typical over-the-counter big game, mule deer, blacktail are your deer species, black bear, wild hogs. But typically, I stick with the black bear and the mule deer there.
How does because I have to ask out of my own curiosity more than anything. Because when everybody thinks of California, they think of like Ted Nugent's run-in with bear baiting and all that nonsense a few years ago. They think of issues in terms of using weapons and selling in state. But as you described to me, the hunting opportunity is quite large. And so for my own curiosity, what is for a resident, what is the tag sales, the license sales there? If you wanted to hunt what you just described, a black bear, let's say the muley or blacktail, and then, you said you shot a squirrel, like what would that run an average resident in California?
The resident license right now is about $51 for the year. And we're allowed up to 2 deer tags. The first one is like $33, $35, something like that. Your second one is about $41.
Okay.
Bear tag is about $49.
Okay. So your general license just to have the right to hunt is about $50.
Right.
And does that give you any like small game privilege or anything like that, or is that just the right to hunt in California?
That'll give you small game, squirrels, rabbits, coyotes.
Okay.
I'm sure there's probably a couple more in there.
Sure.
And then for all the your normal big game, you got your individual tags for.
I see. Okay, that's interesting because in Pennsylvania, your general license, although it's a lot cheaper, I imagine your hunter density isn't huge out your way, like the number of bow hunters that you run into.
Probably not bow hunters. There's quite a few hunters around. There's one zone around here that's pretty infamous for being pretty overcrowded.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. But anyhow, yeah, what I was saying with the licenses here in PA, it's like $20, like $21, and that gives you just your buck tag. That's it. That doesn't that doesn't give you any other extra privileges. If you want to hunt with a bow, you have to buy the bow privilege. If you want to buy the opportunity to hunt with a muzzle loader, you have to buy the muzzle loader privilege. But it doesn't give you any extra tags, right? We can't. We get one. We're a $1 state, and we have antler restrictions out here. And our antlerless tags, our doe licenses, you have to pay for each one, and it's a first come first serve basis. So they have multiple rounds. So we don't have we have somewhat of a target rich environment, but you're really limited on the number of targets you can start going after in a year. But it sounds like in California, although the prices might be a little obviously higher than they are here on the East Coast, it sounds like those aren't lottery tickets, right? You buy it right then and there. Do you have it?
There's a few that are on a draw system for preference points. There's quite a few, but there's also quite a few over the counter that you can get.
Okay. Is that because it's a management unit issue or a species issue?
I think it's more of a management issue because the way that they determine there's 3 separate tiers for a tag. There's unrestricted, there's restricted, and then premier or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it all depends on how quickly a specific zone sells out. So if this particular over-the-counter zone sells out before like June 12th or something like that, then next year it goes to restricted status, and I'm not quite sure what that means.
Okay.
If it continues on that, then it goes to that top tier, and where it's actually a draw.
It becomes a lottery.
Right.
Okay. That's interesting because I guess how many, or I guess I should ask first, how many management units are there in California if you kind of ballparked it off your head? Like, is it more than 50?
No.
Okay.
I'd say there's probably 15.
Okay.
Or so. I mean, the entire west side of the state, almost the entire north to south along the coastal range is one giant zone.
Sure.
And then down south, they have some that are specific muzzleloader zones. They have some specific lottery zones, and then some of those zones are broken up between general and archery.
Okay.
So, this one specific zone, you have to draw it either as an archery tag or a general tag. And if you draw it with that archery tag, obviously you can use your archery equipment. If you draw it in the general, then you can use a gun or bow or whatever you want.
So this is actually a perfect segue already because my head is already spinning trying to understand it. So this is a perfect segue into the first thing about getting into bow hunting, in particular your situation, right? You're not a teenager. You're not a kid. You're not having someone hold your hand, if you will. You have to cut your own path here. And in a state where depending on your management units and zones, it could be a little confusing to try to figure out which tag, which location, is it a lottery, is it restricted, so on and so forth. So let's segue into this challenge for new bow hunters. And let's start with this, getting familiar with your management unit and that sort of stuff. Do you feel, because here in PA, I could walk into Walmart and buy a hunting license, and there you go. I'm a Pennsylvania hunter right then and there. I can go kill that buck anywhere in the state. I can go to Pittsburgh. I can go to Philly. My doe license is a pink envelope. I fill out a slip. I put a check in the mail. It's $7, and they mail it back to me with my tag. It's very straightforward. I just have to pick the management unit. And the reason why I asked about the number of management units is we have about 20 here that break up Pennsylvania, but they're very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
They follow the rivers. They follow Interstate 80, cuts right through the middle of Pennsylvania. A lot of that sort of stuff. And so it's pretty easy, and there's no restriction on when you can use that tag. As long as you're following the appropriate season, you can kill that doe in archery season. You can kill that doe in muzzleloader season. There's nothing really restrictive and issues there. So I guess I want to ask for you, as someone who started as an adult, do you feel that the way that that's kind of broken up in your state with the management zones and how that works, do you feel that's a challenge or kind of a daunting thing as a new bow hunter in particular?
Yeah, I can see how that is. Me, even though starting as an adult, I was lucky enough to have some friends that were able to kind of help guide me through and be like, hey, put in for here, put in for there, just buy this tag or buy that tag. So between that and the conversations that I've been able to have with them, it's been pretty straightforward. But I think the hardest thing is, I've been out in the mountains my entire life, but I don't know where to go.
Yeah, right.
So any U.S. Forest Service land I can go on, so just trying to break that down.
Right. Right.
Where I can go, where I can't go, within those units, can be a little bit daunting, and I'm looking at a map and pulling my hair out because I don't know,
Right. No idea where to start.
I didn't even know, okay, I got this drainage here and this creek, what does all this mean? So I think that's probably one of the hardest parts about starting as an adult is just kind of figuring out where to go, what to do, and what kind of equipment to get.
Did you have like an understanding of like how to read a topo map, for example?
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew how to do all that. I'd been backpacking, all over the place since high school. So I had a good understanding of that. I just didn't know, really what made for good deer habitat, that kind of thing.
Right. And the reason why I asked about the topo map is I know that that's a question I get a lot. Like, how the heck do you look at a topo map? Or another thing is too, here, at least in the Northeast, I can look at let's say on X, for example, look at an aerial image, and I can tell from an aerial image if that tree is a maple or an oak. Right. And so obviously for me, I'm able to key on, but if you asked me, if you if you pin me to a wall and said, how do you do that? I have no idea. I've been looking at maps, and I've been looking at aerial images now for over a decade. I have no idea how I know how to do that. I just know how to do that.
Right.
And I'll say obviously I don't know California landscape, what you're hunting, but I'll say for the folks that are listening at home, this tip kind of applies anywhere. When you kind of find an elevation in your area, let's say, for example, I'm looking at a Pennsylvania map because we have the Appalachian Mountains. It's a lot of different elevation changes. Usually trees, if you're going to find that break or that edge, they're going to follow a certain topographical line. And when you find a tree that's, let's say, even if you're in the woods and you're actually boots on the ground scouting, and I see that there's this, I'll just pick white oaks because those are a preference here in PA. Find a stand of white oaks at, let's say, 1,200 feet, right? I can almost be guaranteed that every other 1,200 foot area within a certain couple hundred yards or half mile is probably also going to have white oaks. And that if I don't find them lower or don't find them higher, this 1,200-foot line is going to be kind of the topographical line that I'm going to want to follow when I'm checking out draws, when I'm checking out stuff. So I might have draws that are steeper and they might look better on a map for pinching and funneling deer, but they're not going to have that food source on them, and that they might choose to go one ridge over. That's something that I've always had. Again, I don't know the area that you're hunting in terms of like what food sources you guys have.
Yeah, and the hard thing about aerial images in California, like I mentioned before we were recording, was they don't like to log over here, so it's all super thick, and you can't tell what's what. It's really hard to tell which way the slopes are going. What the ground's doing, what's going on underneath the trees, because they're so thick in there between the live ones and the dead ones. So that's kind of something you gotta overcome.
And just try to just bushwhack your way into finding a deer.
I was out last year and I had my trail cam set up, and I had this bear that was coming in, and he always came in the same direction. So I was gonna try to go after him, and it's just like I can't walk through this stuff like he does somehow.
Squeezes his fat black rear end through everything.
Right. So. It's hard to do, but
is it all ground hunting what you're predominantly doing, or do you find tree stand locations or saddle locations?
I do mostly ground hunting. I've never done a tree stand. I know some people that do. I've thought about it. In the case of the bear that I was going after last year, I thought that maybe that was the way that I was going to get him. So I'm still tossing that up as a possibility.
When it comes to, so, you're reading the aerial images and all that sort of stuff, and that is something you're learning. Do you feel, though, because we talked earlier, how long have you been bow hunting now?
About 4 years.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and you're not a moron. You've been looking at maps and stuff longer than that. But do you feel that after, taking that map knowledge you had prior of backpacking and being in, and now 4 years later, do you feel that you're getting better seeing in the woods from not a hiker, biker, backpacker perspective, from more of a hunter's perspective? Like, that's my problem now. Like, I can't go on a hike and enjoy it anymore. I can't go and have a nice, healthy, but like my wife and I just went on the rails to trails here in Pennsylvania. And as we're pedaling along, I'm like, oh, that'd be an interesting spot for a deer to bed. Oh, look, there is a deer bed. Like that's how my brain, right. It's ruined. Like, I can't enjoy the woods anymore, because every place I'm like, southwest wind, that tree would be perfect. Here's a trail crossing. Do you feel yourself doing that kind of inadvertently more, or is it still kind of like, I have no idea?
I do, to a certain degree. And I think it's more of I'm just looking for things, more than, looking for things that would make for a deer to want to be there. I'm just looking for that deer. So I don't know if that's a thing, or I just want to see a deer. I don't know.
I mean, if deer are there, it would make sense they're going to be there later. Like it does.
It's normally when I see the bucks, they're in town somewhere. So
yeah, well, that's also true. That's also very true. Yeah, that happens a lot out here. Yeah, a lot of big deer. We actually are very infamous. I'm about 30 minutes away from kind of a gated community, and they have two golf courses on the community, and there is a monster that is hanging out on the 9th hole that comes across the road, and he beds right next to the green. You can drive right through the middle of this gated community. Oh, he's enormous. And I used to have a buddy that lived up there that worked with me at the same school, and he'd come into school and here, look, I saw him today. Here he is bedded on his smartphone there. Here he's bedded by the side of the road. So yeah, I feel your pain. I want to ask this, and I want to transition into the gear and deciding those things, because that's another hindrance that new bow, and heck, even me 17 years in. So I have to ask, when it comes to, let's actually say you harvest an animal, you said you shot the squirrel, and you've grown up in the outdoors, your line of work as a police officer, you've seen everything. You're not probably a very squeamish person. But are you concerned of like, oh yeah, now I have this 150, 175 pound animal that I have to get out of here? that I have to process, that I have to clean. Like, do you think you are prepared mentally and physically for that huge step and that next step in the process?
Yeah, I think so, because it's, it's one of those final steps, you can see the finish line. So you got that animal down. Now don't get me wrong, it seems like a daunting task to, because where we usually hunt, there's no dragging them out. You got to quarter them out, you got to pack them out. And I hate hiking. I really do. So the thought of having to take multiple loads sometimes, like, why would I want to do that? But I also don't want to do one giant heavy load either, so it's just one of those, you're just going to have to suck it up.
Just suck it up and deal with it and
embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck. Come hell or high water, you're going to figure it out.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's the best answer you could probably do. And I'm glad that you gave that one. I really am, because that's what, for some, when I'll never forget when I was 13 years old and I shot my first deer, my granddad was like, "You're figuring it out." He was my mentor. "You're figuring it out. Here you go. Here's a knife. I'll show you, how to not screw it up and how not to cut yourself, but you're figuring out the rest."
Yeah.
And of course, where we live in PA, we don't have the cut. Some guys do. They go in super deep and they'll quarter them out. But I had the drag. After I had spent like an hour cleaning out this animal, I'm now dragging it. And I'll never forget that as a 13-year-old, under my breath saying all sorts of words my parents didn't know about, and dragging this thing back to the truck going, "I'm never doing this again." And then I'll never forget getting back to we load the it was just a whitetail doe, and we load it into the truck. We drive back to the pole barn and we're doing the processing, and we finish everything up. And we have these little, freezer wrap paper, little white bars of gold. And I'm sitting there going like, I did this. And the sense of accomplishment, like, this is something that it sucked. It was zero fun. Mm-hmm. After the moment I squeezed the trigger, after the elation was all done and we get down and I actually walk up, that was no fun up until that point. It was zero fun. Now I find great enjoyment in it. It's like golf to me, right? I'm still not amazing at it, but it's just cathartic. It's just something I do. And so I'm glad that you just embrace the suck, because at the end of the suck, you're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to go do that again. Mm-hmm. And that's just what you're going to do. That's awesome. So let's segue into the gear here, because we talked a little bit off air about how you're starting in. And of course, you're a grown up, you can navigate YouTube, you can make it around the internet, you can do all that sort of stuff. But you still, as a person with a house and a job and kids and able to make grown up decisions, you're still looking at all the archer world going, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming.
Right.
So why don't you unpack that a little bit in terms of what, like, did you just kind of inundate yourself with too much information, or even in the information that you wanted to pull out, was that even still too much?
I think so, because, there's so many different types of broadheads. There's so many different kinds of arrows, and what spine should I get? And so I think it's just, I got all this information coming into my head and I just don't know how to sort it out. So I think eventually, and I did the same thing when I got into reloading. There was a point that I had everything I needed in my online shopping cart and getting ready to press checkout, and I just got so overwhelmed. I was like, nope, delete it all. And then it was like another year or two before I actually did it, after doing a little bit more research and being able to better sort everything out, on what my goals were, what I wanted to accomplish in reloading, or in this case, archery. Do I need the big top of the line stuff? No. Do I want it? Absolutely.
Right.
I was over at a buddy's house the other day, and he's got a prime synergy that I was wanting to shoot, but he's a lefty and I'm a righty, so wasn't able to do that. Anyway, so yeah, I think just over the course of my research, I just came to terms with, what, I'm just gonna get one of the, just pick one of the top brands that I keep hearing about and we'll go from there. So as far as the bow, I got it at a Bass Pro. I figured that one was probably a decent, middle of the line setup, and it's done good for me.
Right, and that is also very important, that it has done very well for you because it shoots arrows down range. Right, it's nice to be really nice to go shoot your buddy Synergy, and those things were like 1100 brand new bare bow, but that diamond still is. And this is something that I have a good friend of my grandfather's here, lives locally, and he's shooting a Hoyt from 2005. It's a 15-year-old compound, which is a dinosaur in today's world. And he brought it over, and he wanted me to do some work on it last summer. And he said, "Do you think I should upgrade?" And I said, "Well, do you shoot this bow just fine?" "Oh yeah, I shoot it just fine. It's a great shooting bow. Do you think I should upgrade?" I said, "Well, what's the point in upgrading? If your car drives you to work, drive your car. It's paid off. You don't have to. There's nothing. You're fine." And so I guess my question to you then is, when you decided, like, I'm just going to go get this bow, was that just like a humongous, like, pressure release and just weight off your shoulders of, okay, I finally have the bow. That's step one. Now that's checked off. Let's start looking at other things.
Not right away. Because it was one of those like, well, is this really good enough? And now I don't really care. Like you said, it shoots arrows mostly where I want to put them. It probably shoots better than I do. So I don't have any complaints about it. So, but then, once you get the bow, what kind of arrows? Practice tips are easy. You just pick ones that you like the way they look, and that's
right.
it.
Yeah.
But as far as, do I start out with gold tips? Do I, so I think I've been pretty much just sticking to the middle of the road. I don't think the East and Axis are, kind of on the same plane as maybe the Full Metal Jackets. I don't know.
No, I like the Axis more. I like the Axis
really?
more. Yeah. Oh yeah. Love the Axis way more.
That's good to know.
Yeah. I shot them for a couple of years. I absolutely love them. I'll shoot them over a Full Metal Jacket, because all Full Metal Jacket is an Axis with an aluminum sleeve on it. So why? Well, it's a thinner interior card, but why already make something that's really good heavier? I don't know. It's overthinking it, in my opinion.
Okay, so that's good to know.
There you go. See, you're building confidence by the minute.
Right. Hey, thanks for that. So then now that I picked my arrows, I got to pick my broadheads, and there's a bajillion of those. I don't know. I think I just kind of looked at ones that the reviews were like, yeah, it flies just like my field points and this and that, and so I was like, I'll give these a shot. Which ended up being the NAP Kill Zone, and then I ended up getting they have like the practice broadhead that
right in the package. Yeah.
So I threw that thing on, and I was actually kind of impressed on, it flew pretty true to what I was set up for. And then I started reading that, well, for thicker skinned, game, bears, they got the thick hair and blah, 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 blah. You don't really want the mechanicals and this and that. So I'm like, oh, I'll pick up some G5 strikers and we'll see. And they haven't flown quite the same, but it's mostly an up and down versus left to right that I found, but a few quick adjustments and it's been all right.
Right. And that's way better, having a broadhead, a fixed blade that planes up and down, because that just means it's planing, right? If it's going left, it's going right, it's doing God only knows what when it's flying through air. But when it's planing just up and down, like shooting, I shoot the Magnus stuff, and shooting that 2-blade or 4-blade, it literally will sometimes just take off. Like 0 to 40, it'll be exact with my field points, and then like 41, 42, 43, it just starts lifting up like it's just literally an airplane on a runway.
That's crazy.
And like 50, I have no logical explanation for it. I'm not a physicist. I'm an English teacher. It's not my thing, but I've just noticed that. So and that's why I tell people be like, oh, I can't get my fixed blades to fly with my field points. That's like everybody. Okay, well, is it missing left, right? No, it's just missing a little bit higher, a little bit low. Okay, we'll deal with it. Just move your situs gauge. It's flying true. It's okay. And because left and right stuff means it's probably doing some corkscrew in the air, and good knows how much energy you're losing. But anyhow, I want to go back to the Easton axis. So because I'm in the industry, and I've been in the industry for forever, and I fell into the trap of, I shouldn't say the trap, I went into the smaller diameter equals more penetration. Is that why you were with the axis, or was it just like, no, I got a good deal on them, or they weigh a little bit more than your average arrow, I think they're going to hit a little bit harder, so on and so forth?
I don't think it had so much to do with the penetration, maybe a little bit, but I think it was all the things, really. They're a little bit higher quality than what I was using, and I can't remember what I was using. They are a little bit thinner, so yeah, maybe you do got a little bit less friction there as it slips through, but I mean, they seem to be built like a tank, so.
They are, and that's why I like them so much. They are. I never had a problem with an axis unless I did something that would have destroyed any other arrow. So I always had really good luck with mine. I asked about the axis because I know when I bought the axis, I think it was like 2014, maybe 2015, and I was like, I need to get amazing penetration. Not because I already didn't have really good penetration already with standard diameter arrows, but my brain was like, it needs to be better. You need to bury 8 inches in the dirt on the other side instead of 4, and it's just stupid. And so I bought them for that. I know it's done, like it's over. And so here, spend more money on things you don't need. That's a lot of archery, a lot of the industry. But anyhow, back to the topic at hand. The axis, I mean, they performed really well for me, but I was in I need the smaller diameter arrow, but you were pursuing a lot of different things. They're better straightness than probably the arrow you were using. They're a heavier arrow than the arrow you were using. Definitely durability, probably wise, they were better than what you were using if you were using a much cheaper shaft. So that's good. That's something that I tell a lot of new people when it comes to, because the arrows, I actually think arrows are worse than the broadheads. Because with the arrows, if you just go to Walmart or Dick's or something and pull something out of a box, the spine knob might be right. It might not be cut to the right length for you. It might already have the insert installed, and you can't change it.
Right.
Whereas with the broadhead, at least you kind of know what you're getting into. But with an arrow, there's so many brands, and every brand makes different diameters, and they make different straightness tolerances of those diameters, and then they put a different decal on it and call it this. And the money of this, that, and everything. And then, of course, you always have people who are like, well, Easton's the only way to go. No, Gold Tip's the only way to go. And then you turn on the Sportsman's channel and somebody's being sponsored by Victory, and it's just your head swims with the arrows. Right. So I'm impressed that you literally looked at it and was like, nope, that is what I want for this reason. And you went out and you got it, and it's performed well for you. And that's why I tell people, just pick something. Just pick with it and go with it.
I think you nailed it right there. With my other arrows, and I was like, I'm not real happy with the quality of these ones, so I want to upgrade to a better quality arrow, and this is my budget range. And the other arrows, straightness were like 5/1000 of an inch or something like that. And with these ones, they were supposed to have a straightness of like 2/1000 of an inch or something like that. And so I was like, it seems to be like an overall better arrow. And, I thought they looked cool on top of that. So they fit within my budget. They were a better arrow. I went with it.
Right. And I think that, because that, picking equipment is nowadays inarguably the hardest challenge for new bow hunters. And then, of course, you have reading the maps and actually getting an animal in front of you. But I think picking that and just, you knew that I wanted to upgrade a little bit, so on and so forth, and you just went out and did it. Because you could sit there and hem and haw around for years trying to pick the perfect thing before you even buy it, and you're not going to do it. I've taken a picture, I think I posted on Instagram a while back. I probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 dozen shafts just laying around my shop that I will never shoot again because I was looking for, I know, right? Welcome to big 17 years into this hobby. It sucks more money than my car. But it's like, I had to find this heavy hitting aluminum and this fatter diameter arrow for 3D, and then this skinny one. And now I just find I shoot pretty much one arrow for everything except for indoor shooting. And I'm no better or worse than I was when I started. I mean, hopefully I'm better. But I think that's the challenge for new people, is that you're not going to turn into Levi Morgan overnight. Pick one and shoot it and enjoy it. Because if you don't, you're just adding your own hurdles to archery and to bow hunting by just hem and hawing around and delaying it further and just constantly uncertain if you're making a right choice. I think that's good that you went with that. And then I have to ask, being a new guy, when it came to the rest situation, so you shoot a whisker biscuit, you don't shoot a drop away. Was that a personal, that's never going to fail me, which a whisker biscuit won't unless you shear it off? Or was it I just don't know, I'm just going to shoot it?
I think it was more of the first. Simplicity. I don't have to worry about, much tuning issues with it. It held it where I needed it to. And, I know there's big debate on, whisker biscuit yardage. I think Pigman does a video on that. I'm never going to shoot at 100 yards, so I think within my comfort range, it does what I need it to do. And it's not going to make that much of a difference, if it's not going to make me not have a pass through at 50 yards that I normally would have.
That's correct. And this is, again, I want to bring this up as these challenge to new bow hunters is, I think the biggest thing is you just get in your own head. You got to have this, like, you watch my videos, you watch Troy Fowler, you watch Garrett Prawl, you watch Sean's Outdoor Adventures, you watch all these guys and you see us and we're shooting bullet holes with bear shafts. We're shooting bullet holes with fletch shafts. And they go with their whisker biscuit, they go with even their drop away, and they can't do it. And they're like, oh, I got to change my rest. How long have you been shooting? Is it doing what you need it to do? You don't need to go buy a $200 ham ski if your whisker biscuit's doing already what you needed to do, right? And the simplicity of it. Right. I know. And if your bristles wear out, you buy the replacement disc.
Right.
And you're done. Now, are you going to go win Vegas with a whisker biscuit? No, you're not. You're not going to go win Vegas with a whisker biscuit. Yeah. But there's lots of guys that go with ham skis and vapor trails and don't win Lancaster or Vegas either. Mm-hmm. So it way more comes down to the archer and your confidence level. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about with the arrows and even with buying a budget bow setup. Be confident in what you have. Don't think, oh, I would be better if I did have this, or I would tune better, or I could have that accuracy. Right. I love that video by Pigman, though. That thing's like 6-7 years old at least. And he's just like, bam, 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 bare strings, this thing, that thing, lighted knocks, whisker biscuit. And I just love watching Pigman because he's like
whisker biscuit.
Yeah. He's like deaf in one ear and blind in one eye. Like, it's just, he is the epitome of what an outdoor specialist should be. Right. But anyhow, so I'm glad that you have overcome some of those hurdles, because I think a lot of people at home need to hear this from a seasoned veteran in terms of you with these struggles. You've seen them, you've gone through them, you've overcome them, and you're just like, to heck with it. A hater's going to hate, if you will. I've made this decision. I'm going to go with it. So I have one last topic here that I would like to real quick touch on when it comes to new bow hunters and get people getting prepared, but say, you're preparing to shoot your first animal. Outside of just shooting in the backyard, do you do any other type of archery locally or at the state level, shoot with your buddies to continue to practice, or is it just kind of all on your own?
For me, it's all been on my own. I've looked into, getting into the 3D target shooting. There's a archery shop, up in Fresno that does that. And if nothing else, just try to get better at my ranging and, kind of shooting on the fly. One thing that I've heard is to get better, don't practice, but shooting competitions. I don't know how true that is, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it is true. I'm not going to lie.
So, I just haven't had the time for that. So right now it's mostly on my own. If I go up to the mountains, I might take my bow with me or whatever. And actually, me and the boys went up today and went to go scout and put some trail cams up, and we took our bows and didn't get to shoot them because I found like the only sharp rock on the mountain and popped my tires. So that was fun to deal with. But every once in a while I get up on the patio or whatever and kind of shoot down to practice those angles or whatever. But for the most part, it's just been in the backyard. I might, whenever I can, I'll go out and get it out to longer ranges. But living in town, that's a little tough to do.
Yeah, neighbors don't take too highly to that. And I've done a lot of sketchy things with neighbors. I've shot over roads before. I actually just the other day, I can get to about 40 yards max distance in my backyard, but I wanted to try at 50 just to make sure my sight tape was on. So I stood in the middle of the road and shot parallel to the house. That probably wasn't the best thing to do at like 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, where I live now, I've lived here for a couple of years, but my house before that, I had good neighbors, so they didn't complain a bunch. And I would shoot out in my front yard, and I can shoot on my property at 20 yards, and then at 30 yards, I had a dot on the street, and then at 40 yards was across the street. So shooting at 30 and 40 yards, I tried not to do when nobody was around.
Yeah.
For those listening at home, I don't recommend it.
Yeah, neither do I.
Just throwing that out there, but yeah, so.
It's cool. It's cool that you, this is, people get comfortable shooting at 20 yards, but you're finding ways to even if it's possibly illegal, to shoot at longer distances, right? And this is something, because we talked earlier, whenever I think of California hunting, I'm thinking of like desert, 70, 80 yard shots with a bow. But we talked earlier, it's really more like Eastern whitetail distances, like that 0 to 50 if you're really pushing it, right? And really my comfort level is like 35. Like I don't really feel comfortable taking a crack at a whitetail past that. And I imagine with a blacktail or a muley, really you wouldn't feel comfortable taking that shot either.
Right.
But it's funny that you brought up the shooting competitions make you better, practice doesn't make you better. Because I will tell you, I would rather have a giant buck standing in front of me at 20 yards once than go through a shoot down and shoot 60 arrows in an hour. Right. Like I would so much rather. It's so painstaking, and the concentration level. If you're shooting 3D, the yardage judging, like you had talked about, I am garbage at that. Absolute garbage. And I've been shooting for way longer than I should be for shooting garbage. And here in Pennsylvania, we have the IBO, and it's right in my backyard in terms of the shooting and the judging of distance is what I've had to do my entire life, and I'm still terrible at it. So that is something that new hunters, as a challenge, as a hurdle, don't think of it as one. Think of it as something you're just going to have to grow with, because I'm terrible still. And that's really also kind of a reason why I limit my shots to be 30 yards and in, because I can estimate those yardages pretty quick. I can gap shoot my pins pretty quick. It's when we start getting past that. Like my max distance in IBO is 45 yards. And when they stick a turkey 3D target or a little javelina target at like 41, 42 yards, that thing looks like it's 5 miles away. And I'll send an arrow over its back in a hurry.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I started doing, is, all summer long, I'd go out there and I'd shoot however many arrows a day or, whatever. But as the season came up, probably for about like the last 2 to 3 weeks before season, I'd go out there and I'd just shoot one arrow. I might do that several times a day, but I just shoot one arrow because that's the one that counts, is that first shot. So I wanted to make sure that first shot was a good shot. Whether that helped or not, I don't know, but in my head it does. So why not?
The one arrow practice is severely underrated. Levi Morgan, I think, actually made a video about it on Bow Life TV a few years ago. It's just that his dad would make him do that. One arrow, shoot it, go retrieve it, come back. Shoot it, go retrieve it, come back. And he's like, he'd make me do that at 40, 50 yards.
Yeah.
He put on a lot of miles just getting
and I'd do that. I'd go out there and I'd shoot, the one arrow, and I'd go back inside for another couple hours, do whatever else, go back out a couple hours later when I had, and I'd go out to 40 yards, shoot the one arrow. Go back inside and do whatever, on my list that day. And a couple hours later, go back out and maybe shoot 30 yards or, whatever it happened to be. So, I do that to kind of simulate the pressure of, the one shot, when you got that animal there, because I know that if I don't make that good shot, then I'm going to be upset at myself for the next couple hours until I can go back out there and do it again. And I don't want to be that way. So, I just make sure, do that one shot and try to make it my best. And if it's in that pipe plate, then cool. I'm happy with that.
Because it's the first shot, the cold shot that counts. Yep. It's the only one you get.
Yep.
It's the only one you get. Well, thank you, Kyle, for that amazing piece of advice. I'm dead nut serious about that. And I'm going to wrap up the episode here. Do you have any outgoing social media for the people to know about, or is it all personal?
I do. You can follow me at Central Valley Outdoors. It's been kind of dormant for a while, but hopefully, it usually goes a little dormant during the off season, but try to pick it back up. But go ahead and give us a follow at Central Valley Outdoors, and we'll see you in the season.
Well, if you definitely shoot something, I need a picture, because that's going on the AJA one. Oh, that's going up there. Well, folks, I appreciate you joining me and Kyle today here on the podcast. Again, if you want to be part of the podcast, send me an email to averagejackarchery@gmail.com. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, leave a comment on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful creation, and we'll get to see you next time.